Hello, how are we doing today? I am coming to you with another live, and I really slurred my words then, didn't I? This one I won't blame you for those that have followed me if you literally think this is rich coming from you, because today, I'm gonna cover why selfish sewing is so hard and 3 tips on how we can overcome it. And the reason why I say you might be thinking, well, this is rich coming from you, is because if you have followed me for a little while, or if you're a member or anything like that, you're gonna realize the last thing on my to-do list is selfish sewing. Now, a lot of my creative community give me very good excuses that I love to use, i.e. my profession is fashion, and so by the time I've exhausted my creative juices and want to make something for myself, I've run dry. And I really lived that narrative for a long time, and I see it in the community. There are people who keep sharing their makes week in, week out, and the makes are for their granddaughter or their friend, or they've been asked to do something and they're making all of these amazing pieces, but it's never for them. And then there's the other side of people who have it nailed, and the whole reason we start sewing to build our dream wardrobe, and they are making piece after piece for their own wardrobe. There is no right or wrong. There is nothing wrong with selfless sewing, and there's nothing wrong with selfish sewing. I mean, even the term selfish sewing makes it sound like it's a bad thing. Whatever your reason for getting into it, there is no, like, sewing for yourself is not a negative. But anyway, before I chew your ear off, so my journey was, really struggling to sew for myself, really feeding into that narrative like, oh, well, it's my profession, my creativity is spent on my clients and my members, and by the time I sit down to sew for myself, the inspiration, the motivation, the mojo just isn't there. But over the last, I'm gonna say as recent as like 7 months, it's definitely not been as long as a year, through tips, tricks, and some introspective like review of myself, journaling, and just kind of getting to grips with the reality, I've honestly cracked it, guys. I am now sewing more than ever for myself, and I want to come to you today and bring you these tips and things that have helped me, in the hope that they help you too, because building your dream wardrobe, having that body confidence, enjoying the process, learning transferable skills. We're not just being creative, we're being disciplined, we're being like liberated to express who we are through the medium of clothes. And there is so much reward to have from that. I really want to share with you the tips and tricks today. But before we jump into it, I also want to give you 3 reasons as to why you might be finding selfish sewing hard. And the first reason is one I have grappled with for many moons, because I never identified as this until I just accepted it one day, is perfectionism. Now, I'll tell you why I never identified with being a perfectionist. Because in my mind, I look at something and I cut corners. In my mind, especially with sewing, so many of us out there skip the toiling process. I know you do. Don't pretend you don't. I know some of you do. Skip the toiling process. Don't really finish things by hand. I love machine finishing stuff because it's quick. I want to cut that piece of clothing out. I want to sew it up and I want to wear it. My impatience gets the better of me. And so this is why I just never identified as a perfectionist. But after about, I don't know, 782 people told me I was, I guess I started to slow down and think maybe I am. And when you get hung up on the details, or when you look at a piece of clothing that you've made and I promise 9 out of 10 times it is only you, notice the flaws, notice the little errors, notice how something couldn't be as perfect as it could, that can put you off. And when that puts you off, selfish sewing becomes more of, not a dread, that's a little bit dramatic, but it just becomes a little bit more of a, well, if it's not going to be perfect, and it kind of chips away at us. So perfectionism can be one of the things that gets in our way, and perfectionism can lead, number 2, to self-doubt. Now, nearly, and I will say this with my chest, nearly every single person I come across in my membership, in the sewing community, in my creative community audience, has self-doubt of some capacity. I have self-doubt. As a creative entrepreneur, as a fashion designer and a business owner, I have imposter syndrome nearly every day. I just have to push it to the back of my mind. But with sewing, I have so many members come into the DPL Atelier and they think, I'm not ready for that, I don't think I can do that. Oh, the 3-day design challenge, perfect example. So the 3-day design challenge is a quarterly challenge where I teach you design skills, I teach you industry standard design skills, I teach you how to look at the world in a completely different way. You will never run out of inspiration after you take this challenge. I give away prizes, we host some workshops, I work alongside you. The amount of people who do not sign up to the 3-day design challenge because they do not think that they are capable of designing, they do not think they are creative enough, honestly, and I'm there to give you the skills to tell you, yes you are, I guarantee I can make it possible for you to design your own clothes, but it's the self-doubt. And guess what happens when people sign up to the 3-day design challenge? They have a bloody knees up, royal blast good time. I've never, this is very cocky of me, but it's true because I always ask for feedback, I have never had an ounce of negative feedback on that challenge. People unleash their inner fashion designer, their confidence grows, they realise that if they break it down into simple steps, that they actually can design their own clothes. They can unleash their inner fashion designer and be the creative person that they completely doubted as little as 3 days ago. So self-doubt is another thing that absolutely gets in our way. And this is all feeding into each other. So it's all a bit of like a negative cycle. You know what it's like having the chatter at the back of your head. And as I say, I have it every day as well, maybe in different departments or different things I'm doing with business. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. However, I do have tools in order to put those voices at bay. But the third thing that may get in your way and it may trip you up and make you just hesitant to selfish sew, you might find it easier to do other projects, to maybe not make the garment but make the kind of simple accessory, whatever it is. The third thing is sometimes running before you can walk. Now, again, in my membership, we break things down step by step. Me and my members work very, very harmoniously together to put those building blocks in place so that we are not biting off more than we can chew. And actually what happens as a result are really beautiful tailored fitting garments because we haven't tried to do all the bells and whistles. And so if you have just gotten into sewing your own wardrobe, Alex is the energized and supportive teacher I know, would thoroughly recommend joining a membership. Oh, you sneaky lady. Hello, hello, Al, thank you so much for joining me. So, another thing is, you just threw me off my train of thought then, you lovely woman. Another thing is going a little bit too high in the skill level, especially when you're starting out. So I see so many beginner sewists literally learn to thread up a sewing machine and the next thing they want to do is a tailored, lined, interfaced, all the bells and whistles jacket, or they want to do a pair of jeans with all the hardware, all the studs, a fly front fastening, concealed zips. I love, with a passion, people who have that confidence and they want to push themselves. But what can happen, and I never want to discourage you from trying, but what can happen is that you can dishearten yourself when you've tried so many techniques and you've just jumped so far ahead and it's not come out as you thought. It took me, even the other day when I made that slip dress, my friend's wedding, I put a concealed zip in, I put it in super speedy and the concealed zip was really naff, and in a toile now, may I add, which is a prototype garment. The concealed zip was really naff and I thought, how did I, excuse my French, how did I balls that up, you know? And I was like, I should know better than that. And I just caught myself negatively chatting away to me and I was like, this is why I get in my own way selfish sewing, because of if you do something and it doesn't turn out how you expect it to, because through no fault of your own, you've just had the ambition and the drive to go just a little bit too far in the skills too soon, then it's going to dishearten you and it's going to really affect your journey. So these are just 3 things that can be the reason why we struggle to selfish sew. Also, hit me up in the comments. We should really rename it because selfish sewing just sounds so negative and it should never be a selfish act because it's an act of self-care. Self-care sewing. I just answered my own question. I'm coining it, okay? So, 3 reasons why self-care sewing is so difficult and 3 ways to overcome it is what I'm going to rename this title. So let's jump into it then. What 3 tips have I picked up over the last 7 months? And can I just say, I've been a fashion designer for over 10 years now. So the last 7 months in that entire journey, I'm kicking myself as to why I haven't given myself self-care sewing earlier on. But these 3 tips are what I've picked up, and a big shout out and thank you actually goes to my members, because as a creative community, I've learned from them just as much as they are learning from me. But the first thing is actually I'll start with this one, because the first thing is having that accountability. And every single month in the DPL Atelier, which is my fashion membership, every single month we have something called a creative co-working session. Now this is 90 minutes once a month, okay? That really doesn't sound like a lot, but the amount that we can achieve in that very small amount of time is phenomenal. And you really can, once you get into a state of deep flow, read a book by Cal Newport called Deep Work, and it speaks about, I've got so many tips, I don't even know where to begin, but it speaks about when you get into that flow, if you put a timer on just for 5 minutes, you'll actually find that you tend to work beyond it, because if you can just overcome that first hurdle of getting started, you get into a state of deep flow, and that's exactly what happens in our creative co-working sessions. But beyond that, we keep each other accountable, and we are like-minded creatives. We come together every month, we have a chat. Again, I can pick up tips from my creative community, they can ask me a few questions, and we learn from each other, and we really stay inspired and accountable. Elizabeth, who has just given me the cutest little comment on this live, I meet up with her once a fortnight, and we have a little chat about our businesses, and we stay accountable, and I literally wouldn't be where I am in life without that woman. Having that support around you can really lift you up and help you rediscover your sewjo, because what happens is when we get deflated and when we hit a hurdle, we can actually retreat, and we actually need to be pushing ourselves out there more so when we feel like not doing it, if that makes sense. To tie into that then, staying accountable, finding the time. Now there is something called a Pomodoro technique, and this has revolutionized my life, not just with self-care sewing, it's revolutionized my life full stop. Now I just touched upon it. Set a timer, see how far you get, and 9 out of 10 times you will want to go beyond. But what Pomodoro technique is you set 20 minutes, that's it. Don't overwhelm yourself, especially when we make garments, depending what it is. But when we're making garments, this dress over here in the corner, shall I get it for you? Whole weekend I'm spending on this, 1 whole weekend, and I'm still not in love with it. But if I had said to myself, I need to book out a whole weekend to make that dress that I may or may not be in love with from the end of it, that does not sound appealing, okay? That is not going to convince my already scattered monkey brain to sit down for a whole weekend, which is so overwhelming and daunting. And so, the Pomodoro technique is setting a timer for 20 minutes only and having a 5-minute break afterwards. If you get into that state of deep work and you don't want to stop the timer, force yourself to stop for 5 minutes. Have a cup of tea, which reminds me, I've got one here. Have a cup of tea, have a break for those 5 minutes, and then go back to it and set a timer for another 20-minute session. This has revolutionized how I work, because I'm not overwhelmed at the prospect of a whole weekend of sewing. It's just 20 minutes. What's 20 minutes out of my day? And you will find that you chip away and chip away and chip away, and that can really encourage your sewjo to return. The final tip then, my friends, to reignite some self-care sewing is a quick win project. Now this can be different for every single person. Your quick win project might be an existing sewing pattern that you have already tried, you've fallen in love with it, you're familiar with the instructions and how to construct it, and you know it looks good on you and you want to make it in all the colours. So for many people that is the belted sweater. We have got the hashtag DPL belted, which was my debut pattern and still remains to be my best seller. It's so quick, you can make it up in an afternoon, it's so beginner friendly, it's comfy, it's stylish, and it really can elevate your wardrobe. for you, that literally might be a pair of Jersey boy short knickers. It might be a t-shirt. If you have a quick win sewing project that you know looks good on you, fills you with confidence, gives you joy, you know it's a quick win that you can add to your wardrobe, it's a really nice way to wean yourself back into self-care sewing. So there we have it, guys. I'm out of breath after that. But honestly, those 3 tips and those 3 reasons as to why I was getting in my own way have really revolutionized my sewing experience and my sewing journey for myself. So even though, yes, my members weren't wrong, my close friends weren't wrong, I do put all my energy into my clients, all the creativity goes into it. This is what I do on a day-to-day basis. The moment I uncovered, number 1, those truths, but number 2, those tips, I am now finding myself sewing for myself, self-care sewing, every single week. And I really hope that whether you relate to that or whether you have your own reasons, if you do have your own reasons and you are watching this on the replay over on YouTube, pop it in the comments down below. I want to know what gets in your way in terms of self-care sewing. I want to know what tips you have to rediscover your sewjo. Do you have that creative accountability partner? If you don't, why not come and join the DPL Atelier, our fashion membership? We are such a warm, welcoming group of people. It's a safe online space to creatively express yourself. I have actually opened up creative co-working sessions for non-members. They will be £5 per session, but feel free to come along because we are literally, if I say so myself, we're a pretty awesome group of people. But if that, you feel like that can help, it's like having a PT, having that accountability, having someone to cheer you on. I am genuinely every single person's creative cheerleader here. If you are following me, I am here to cheer you on every step of the way. But yeah, have a little think about it. Come over and join the DPL Atelier if that sounds good to you. And above all, my friend, you started sewing for a reason. You are watching this and you are on my corner of the internet for a reason. That reason was to creatively liberate yourself, build your dream wardrobe, do yourself a favor, take on a few of these tips and start self-care sewing. Thank you to everybody who has joined me live. I will catch you same time, same place next week. I don't know what I'm gonna go through yet. I think I might like pad out a stand. I feel like some people have asked me to do that, but we'll see, we'll see. It's always a lucky mix. A lucky mix, a lucky dip. Regardless, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful start to your week, my friends, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye!